Now, South Africa's economy is likely to have improved in the second quarter of this year. Statistics South Africa will release the latest GDP numbers a little bit later on this morning. But for now, let's speak to Chief Economist at PwC, Lullu Krugel, on her expectations. A very good morning to you, Lullu, and thank you for your time today. Now, the GDP increased by 0.4% in the first quarter of 2023. But also, it's perhaps worth noting that the fourth quarter of 2022, the economy had contracted by 1.1%. So yes, it is a 0.4 percentage increase, but it's off a lower base to start with. What are your expectations for growth for the second quarter?
Tommy, as you said, most economists do expect the economy to at least we shouldn't get a shock with a recession again, but we shouldn't expect massive growth. To be quite honest, we're expecting growth in the region of 0.5, 0.6%. And the reason for that is that, yes, there are parts of the economy that's doing okay. If you look at the manufacturing output numbers, for example, mining output, the numbers that we already have for the second quarter, that's showing that certain sectors of the economy is actually doing okay. But the consumer is under immense strain. If you look at every single indicator that shows you the health of the South African consumer, it's looking really bad. So yes, on the supply side, there might be some light at the end of the tunnel, but on the demand side, things are looking tough. And even if you look at the ability of companies to respond to load shedding, if you look at April, May, June was a better month in terms of load shedding. But again, the ability of companies to actually respond to that has been skewed. If you look at your smaller and medium-sized enterprises, it was more difficult for them, or they could not put alternative measures in place. Luckily, some of the larger firms and mining, manufacturing, were able to actually put alternative measures in place and actually start to manufacture electricity themselves.
We saw in the first quarter electricity, water and gas, agriculture, all of those contracted. Looking at the state of Eskom and the state of electricity, the water problems and the issues that we're having now as far as utilities are concerned, what are we likely to see within that sector?
Unfortunately, I don't expect a massive turnaround. The figures could look better. We could see a small positive. As I mentioned, if you look at load shedding, so if you look at the production side from Eskom side, the third month of the second quarter looked a bit better. But it's generally not a sector that is, if you look at that part of the manufacturing, electricity manufacturing process, that is out of the woods yet. Although on other ends of the spectrum, if we look at renewables, self-generation, importing of components such as solar panels, etc., I think that is surprising everybody on the positive side, and that has actually created an economy all onto its own. And in fact, I believe that was part of the positive boost that we saw in the first quarter, and that might continue. But again, my concern is that it's skewed. If you look at things like the job numbers, for example, it still shows that the majority of South Africans are in a very, very difficult position. Albeit we do need growth, so it doesn't. I don't want to say it doesn't matter where it comes from, but if the response to the electricity crisis is creating some additional activity in the economy, that is good. That is a positive that we'll take.
We also did in the last quarter see expansion in exports. Are we likely to see that again? And if so, is it the minerals that are spiking the exports?
Yeah, so the mining output is definitely, showed some signs of improvement. The only thing that concerns me if I look at that is if I, on the flip side, look at what is happening on the tax collections. It's telling us a story of, an industry such as mining that is actually under a lot of pressure as well. So you do sit with contradicting information at the moment. Output that is picked up, exports that is picked up on the back of that. But at the same time, if you look at some numbers such as the tax collections, it's showing a different story. So I hope we are not surprised on the negative side there. But again, looking at output in those sectors, and then also, some improvements that we've seen in some of the markets that we export to, that helps. What we do have a challenge with, though, is actually getting the goods out of the country. So although, the production might be there, the export demand might be there, we do have logistics issues and challenges with getting goods out of the port. So there's certain export sectors where this is less of a problem, but there's others where it is a challenge, where you have goods that can't wait to be, they can't be delays in terms of exports.
Lullu, could there be some increased activity in the renewable sphere with more and more households as well as businesses now installing solar power?
Well, I think personally, when we looked at the Q1 figures, that is what surprised everybody on the upside. We were very relieved to see that the economy didn't actually go into that technical recession, and we don't expect that now. So if you look at some of the information that is available, it's difficult to compare what we actually import in terms of panels with the installed capacity. But there's some numbers out there that suggest that it could be equal to a whole phase of load shedding that we've actually managed to take out of the system through the additional installed capacity and renewables. It is quite significant. And the fantastic thing about that is, if you look, yes, we do import a lot of the goods. We do import a lot of the panels, for example. But if you look at some of the economies that and businesses that's created around that, it creates space for small and medium-sized enterprises to look at the installation, the maintenance. If you look at households, if you look at mines and other manufacturing plants that are able to generate their own electricity, there's all kinds of interesting discussions taking place to put that back on the grid. We know that there's some regulatory changes that have happened. So all of those quite positive. But again, as I said, my concern is that it's not something that the broad majority of businesses or even South Africans can buy into. However, I suppose every little bit of pressure that we can take off the system, and every little bit of production that we can increase, will be eventually a positive for everybody in the economy.
So, Lullu, lastly, as I let you go, we did see in the last quarter of 2020 an extremely sharp decline, and this was largely due to COVID. It did take about 2 years for the graph to start inclining again. Are we out of the woods? Is COVID now long gone history? Are we starting to look up?
So in terms of, if you just look at the production in the economy, the output, we are at least, slightly above levels that we were before COVID in most industries. Most industries have recovered. What we have not seen recovering, though, is jobs. So if you look at the overall job numbers in the economy, we're still below the levels that we were pre-COVID. We have not recovered all of the jobs that we've lost across the board, specifically if you look at semi-skilled and unskilled labor. So the areas where we need to absorb high numbers of unemployed South Africans. So it's not a balanced situation at the moment. We have some challenges that we need to sort out. But I also think we do need to, take cognizance of the positives, as you've mentioned, in terms of electricity generation. We're looking at other alternatives, etc. But it's a tough road, and we know we're at that point where we can break through, I would say, 2.5% to 3% growth on a consistent basis. We are not anywhere close to that.